Policy. Good afternoon. Welcome to the West Basin Municipal Water District Water Policy and Legislation Committee and special meeting of the Board of Directors for March 16th. It is now 1 o'clock. Calling this meeting to order. Do we have a quorum, Mr. General Manager?
I'll read the roll call. Director Don Deere. Here. Chairwoman Gloria Gray.
Here.
Director Scott Houston. Director Tommy Favai. Director Desi Alvarez. Madam Chair, we do not have a quorum of the board. However, we do have both members of the committee, so we are ready to begin.
Thank you very much. Item 3, public comment. Is there anyone from the public who wish to speak?
We've not received any requests for public comment, though this meeting is being held both in person and virtually. If there's any member of the public that would like to speak, please indicate so by raising your virtual hand. And Madam Chair, I do not see any requests for public comment.
All right, thank you. Item 4, presentations. Are there any presentations?
Staff has no presentations.
Okay, thank you. Item 5, action calendar. Would you please introduce those items, Mr. General Manager?
Yes, Madam Chair, we have 3 action items on our calendar today. The first is item 5A, adopt a support position on the More Water Act, Large Scale Water Recycling Reauthorization Act. For this presentation, we have Augustine Hahn, our Water Policy and Resources Development Analyst, and the item begins on packet page 3.
Thank you, EJ. Chair Gray, Director Deere. Staff is bringing these federal bills before this committee and board to consider taking a position on. It may be unlikely that these bills get enacted this Congress. However, staff feels it's important to take a position on these issues. And so I'll direct your attention to page 6 of the agenda packet where the slides begin. If we could move on to the next slide, please. And so just a quick summary for you. On February 2nd, 2026, Senator Alex Padilla introduced the Making Our Communities Resilient Through Enhancing Water for Agriculture, Technology, the Environment, and Residences, or the More Water Act. The More Water Act aims to modernize water infrastructure and boost water security. A couple days before that, on January 27th, Senators Cortez Masto of Nevada and John Curtis of Utah introduced the Large Scale Water Recycling Reauthorization Act. This effort aims to extend the USBR's Large Scale Recycling Project Grant Program through 2032. Both of these bills will be discussed tomorrow at the Senate's Energy and Natural Resources Subcommittee on Water and Power. And staff is bringing this before the board to consider adopting a support position on the More Water Act and Large Scale Water Recycling Reauthorization Act. We can move on to the next slide, please. To provide a little bit more background on both of these pieces of legislation, the More Water Act reauthorizes the USBR's Water Smart Reclamation Program, or Title 16, by $550 million. It would also authorize a new multi-benefit conveyance program at $500 million. It would also reauthorize the Large Scale Water Recycling Grant Program at $450 million. And it would also reauthorize a WIN 2016 created USBR Environmental Habitat Restoration Program, or the projects underneath that program at $250 million. Moving on to the Large Scale Water Recycling Reauthorization Act, which is, of course, part of the More Water Act mentioned previously. The Large Scale Water Recycling Reauthorization Act would authorize $450 million to large recycling projects focused on long-term water supply reliability in 17 Western states. To date, this program has invested over $300 million, including $125 million for the Pure Water SoCal program. That, of course, is the project by Metropolitan. We can move on to the next slide, please. Just to give you an idea of the support behind this bill, Aqua Metropolitan Water District, Water Reuse Association, and other water agencies. I should also mention the state water contractors are all taking a support position on this bill. We can move on to the next slide. And just to cover the benefits to West Basin, the More Water Act provides critical federal funds for local projects. And of course, water recycling plays a critical role in reducing reliance on imported supplies. Staff feels that both pieces of legislation reflect the board adopted legislative and regulatory priorities that were adopted by the board earlier this year. And with a good amount of overlap, I'm noting 5 of the priorities that might directly apply to these bills. And so with that, if we can move to the next slide, staff is recommending that the board adopt a support position on the More Water Act / Large Scale Water Recycling Reauthorization Act. That concludes the presentation, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Director Deere, are there any questions?
No, but I would move that this committee recommend support.
Thank you, Director Deere. I concur. So thank you for the presentation. So we do recommend support for this item.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That brings us to item 5B, to authorize agreement for assignment of non-consumptive water use permits to Eni and Oil Gas and Stouffer Management Company, LLC. For this presentation, we do have Matt Bay, our Manager of Water Policy and Resources Development. And this item begins on packet page 18.
Thank you, EJ, and good afternoon, Chairwoman Gray and Director Deere. As EJ mentioned, this is an action item this month. Last month, we brought this topic to you as an information item. Last month, we had let this committee and the board know that the Water Replenishment District had approached West Basin to serve as a sponsor for a couple of non-consumptive water use permits that we would then in turn assign to a couple of entities who are doing remediation work in the West Coast Basin. And if we start on the next slide on page 23 of so I'll just give another quick kind of recap of some of the information we presented last month, but just as a reminder, so the West Coast Basin amended judgment, this authorizes groundwater pumping and storage activities in the West Coast Basin aquifer, and Water Replenishment District is charged as the water master of overseeing those activities. There's also a number of specific agencies that are called out in the judgment who are considered parties to that judgment. You can see those different entities on the list there, and that does include the West Basin Municipal Water District. We are a non-pumping party, however, we are a party to the judgment. Next slide, please. Now, in terms of non-consumptive water use permits, just again to refresh your memory on this, so these are authorized by the judgment amendment, and it's used by what we call non-party entities. So if your name wasn't on that previous slide, you're considered a non-party, and these are used by those non-parties to extract groundwater for remediation purposes. So this supports a variety of different groundwater cleanup projects to mitigate past activities that might have occurred kind of throughout the West Coast Basin where groundwater quality got affected, and so now they're taking actions to clean up those areas. One thing to note is that it does not account against any adjudicated pumping rights, and additionally, if you re-inject the water after it's been treated, they'll waive the replenishment assessment fee. Next slide, please. So an agency that's doing groundwater cleanup work might not necessarily be a party to the judgment, and if so, they have to identify a sponsor who can assign them the non-consumptive water use permit. And in this case, again, West Basin is being asked to serve as the sponsor and to assign that permit to two of the agencies that EJ already mentioned. So the process is pretty straightforward. It's very administrative in nature, but essentially the sponsor, in this case, West Basin, would assign the permit to any oil and gas and software management company through what's called an agreement for assignment. In addition, we do have to sign what's called an acknowledgement letter, and that's all handled between ourselves and the requesting agencies. WRD is not part of that process. They just are kind of observers to that process. And again, the permits, once we assign it to these two agencies, it'll be for a term not to exceed 5 years. Next slide. Okay, so earlier this month, WRD held a public hearing and adopted 2 resolutions. And those resolutions essentially granted West Basin Municipal Water District with those non-consumptive water use permits for those remediation activities that are being conducted. Again, those are Stauffer Management Company, LLC, and any oil and gas. Next slide, please. Provided this information last month. I won't go through it in detail, but just as a reminder, both of the sites are located in Carson. The first one here that Stauffer Management Company is overseeing, it's located at 2112 East 223rd Street in Carson, and that was a former PVC plant that was operated by Stauffer and BP Arco. Next slide, please. The second site is also in Carson, just west of the 405, not too far from here. It was formerly a waste site that was owned by a refining company. It's now considered Gardena Valley Landfill. And so that's where they're conducting their remediation activities. Next slide, please. So just a updated timeline. I'll just focus in on a few things here. So as I mentioned, we brought this as an information item last month. And then earlier this month, WRD held its public hearing to receive feedback and to adopt the 2 resolutions that would grant the permits to West Basin. That's also been complete now. And so where we stand now is we're taking this as an action item to this committee and then to the board of directors to authorize staff to accept the permits and to execute the agreement for assignment and the acknowledgement letters with both of those entities. Next slide, please. So the final step, again, is we're asking for board approval to execute those documents. And if we get that approval, then we would execute those documents with both of the agencies. We would also execute the acknowledgement letters with both agencies. And then we would both notify WRD. At that point, the permits would then become effective for that 5-year period. Next slide. So before I go into the recommendation, I did mention last month that we've spoken with other parties to the judgment who have served as sponsors. There hasn't been any sort of issues or abnormalities involved with it. We feel very comfortable in serving as the sponsor and assigning the permit to both of these agencies. And so with that in mind, staff is recommending that the board authorize staff to execute the agreement for assignment of non-consumptive water use permits with both any and oil gas and Stauffer Management Company, LLC. I'm happy to take any questions from the committee.
Says there on the recommendation, next to last line, any and oil gas, so that should be any
Oh, yes, you're correct. There's a
oil
typo.
and gas, right?
Thank you, Director. Yeah, I should say any oil and gas. You're correct. We'll fix that before we get it to the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt, for the presentation. Any other comments directed here?
No, oh, thank you.
Yeah. Matt, I was reading your staff report, and I think you may have said it. You've spoken to other sponsors, past sponsors, and who are those?
That's correct. So one of them is actually the city of Englewood, who's currently sponsoring a permit. So spoke with their staff, and they didn't have anything really to share. They said it's been a smooth process. And then we've also spoken with the city of Long Beach, who is also serving as a as a sponsor, and I believe in the Central Basin. And they also said that it's been a very smooth process, and following kind of the adoption, they haven't had any needed follow-up or anything like that. So we would expect the same thing for this one.
Yes, and you indicate in the report that you don't expect any administrative challenges or risk associated with doing this, accepting this. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. All right, Director, do you support moving it forward with the recommendation?
Yes.
Yes, and I do also. So we recommend that particular item. Thank you. Can we move on to the next one, please?
Yes, Madam Chair, this next item is item 5C. It's adopted support position on Senate Bill 872 by Senator McNerney. And for this presentation, we do have Augustine Hahn.
Thank you, EJ. Chair Gray, Director Deere. Just for some context, Metropolitan Water District reached out to all their member agencies urging support and requesting sign-ons within 48 hours for this state bill. So just due to the urgency, staff signed on to that coalition letter. But we do want to bring this back to the board with an opportunity to weigh in with an official position. So with that, I'll direct your attention to the slides that we have prepared. And on page 86, just a high-level summary here for you. SB 872, a bill regarding.
Page are we on?
We're on page 86 of the packet.
86.
Yes. So SB 872 is a bill regarding climate change and funding priorities. And it seeks to require $300 million annually from the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, or GGRF, be used for levee repairs in the Bay Delta and subsidence repairs on the California Aqueduct. SB 872 is authored by Senator Jerry McNerney, that's Senate District 5, which is in the Delta area, and is co-sponsored by the state water contractors as well as Restore the Delta. The bill's been double referred with the hearing this Wednesday, March 18th, in Senate Environmental Quality Committee, and would move to the Natural Resources and Wildlife Committee if passed. Staff is bringing this bill before this committee and board to adopt a support position on SB 872. Next slide, please. So for some more background, the California Global Warming Solutions Act of 2006 assigns the State Air Resources Control Board the responsibility of overseeing and regulating greenhouse gas emissions. It permits the board to use market-based compliance methods, raising funds from auctioning allowances, and those funds are placed into the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund. SB 872 mandates that $1 billion be annually allocated based on specific priorities, starting in fiscal year 26-27 until the fiscal year 46-47 year. From this amount, $150 million each year will go to the Department of Water Resources, or DWR, to restore water conveyance systems affected by land subsidence. Additionally, $150 million annually will be allocated to the Sacramento San Joaquin Delta Conservancy for levee improvement projects in the Delta. This is information that the board probably knows, but the State Water Project is one of the largest state-built water and power systems in the United States, conveying water through over 700 miles of canals. With climate change accelerating the frequency and intensity of droughts, floods, wildfires, and sea level rise, the State Water Project must be modernized to ensure long-term sustainability, reliability, and affordability in water distribution. To support this initiative, DWR has undertaken a variety of planning initiatives and reporting. And so I'll cover those briefly here. In January 2024, DWR released the greenhouse gas emissions reduction plan update, which includes DWR's commitment to use 100% zero carbon resources and achieve carbon neutrality by 2035. In May 2025, DWR released the State Water Project Delivery Capability Report, which assessed the impacts of subsidence on these gravity-fed conveyances and how subsidence affects the ability of the infrastructure to function as designed. In August 2025, DWR released the State Water Project Adaptation Strategy. The report finds continued maintenance and additional restoration of the infrastructure system, including those subsidence related damages, as first priority measures for DWR. So climate change will make opportunities to capture and convey water, and those storms are getting flashier. And so restoring full aqueduct design capacity to the California Aqueduct will build the State Water Project's ability to move water through the system during high flow events to locations where that water can be used or stored. Next slide, please. And just as far as a benefit to West Basin, imported water is a primary supply source for the West Basin service area, making up an average of 80% of the service area's drinking water supply over the past decade. This policy also aligns with many of the board-adopted legislative and regulatory priorities adopted earlier this year. And this bill intends to provide for repairs on existing infrastructure, and also goes as far as restricting these funds from being used on new Delta conveyance facilities. And so if we could move on to the next slide. Just to give you an understanding of the support behind this bill, as we mentioned previously, Metropolitan Water District did bring this bill to our attention for a quick turnaround on support. And so West Basin was happy to do that. And we are bringing this back to the board for consideration on an official position. The bill is co-sponsored by the state water contractors and Restore the Delta, and is backed by a broad coalition of environmental organizations who have been at odds over Delta issues in the past. And so for those reasons, staff is recommending the board adopt a support position on SB 872.
I move for the board adopt a support position on SB 872.
Thank you, Director Deere. I do support that. Are there any questions, Director Deere, or just your comment?
Neither, thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, thank you for the presentation. We do support your recommendation. Mr. General Manager, is that the last of the items under 5?
That is correct. That concludes the information calendar. Action calendar.
Thank you.
We do have 2 information items.
Okay, those items, please.
Yes, the first is item 6A. It's a monthly state and federal legislative update. And for this presentation, we have Augustine Hahn, our Water Policy and Resources Development Analyst 2. The item begins on packet page 91.
Thank you, EJ. Chair Gray, Director Deere, the presentation slides for the state and federal update were included as attachments in your agenda report. And so we'll just jump right into it. If we could move on to the next slide. Last week on March 11th, the West Basin Board of Directors held their annual advocacy trip in Sacramento. The directors met with many West Basin delegation members, including our Legislator of the Year awardees. You can see on the slide here that Senator Richardson and Assembly Member McKinnon are shown holding their Legislator of the Year awards. And so thank you to the board members for their time in advocating for West Basin's interests and priorities in Sacramento. And West Basin is also fortunate to have a large delegation of leaders in Sacramento. So we'd like to thank the delegation members and their staff for their time and attentiveness to water issues. We'll move on to the next slide, please. So on to the state update. On March 11th, the Assembly Water Parks and Wildlife Committee held a CII water use hearing with a strong focus on data centers and their water use. Comments from the State Water Resources Control Board and DWR reflect that there is a general lack of data due to varied technologies and quote unquote trade secret protections related to processed water by these CII users. Water districts are expected to classify top CII users and implement best management practices under the Making Conservation a California Way of Life regulations. However, significant concerns regarding data centers and the cost associated with the infrastructure remain. And so this was just an informational hearing, but worth mentioning to the directors. There was also some comments from Water Reuse California, who mentioned that recycled water could play a role in addressing the water demands that these data centers have. And so I'm happy to keep tracking that issue for you and bring any updates before this committee and board. Next slide, please. And so with the filing deadline for the 2026 gubernatorial election passed, that was on March 6th, we saw 8 Democrats and 2 Republicans file. The crowded field consists of a top 5, which you can see listed on the slide, none of whom command a sizable amount of support in early polling results. And as a result, the state's Democratic Party chair sent a letter to the Democratic candidates to honestly assess their candidacy and campaign. I think since that time, there's been one Democratic candidate who's dropped out, and I believe that was Assemblymember Calderon. An overview of all of the candidates that have filed can be found in your state report, as well as some information about each of the candidates. Next slide, please. And so DWR releases the groundwater report, or otherwise known as Bulletin 118. This report highlights the progress in statewide groundwater sustainability and managed recharge. And it's a long report that mostly covers issues related to SGMA, but the report does confirm the commitment to groundwater recharge as a primary resilience strategy, something that West Basin within its Water for Tomorrow strategy is well aware of, and something that this agency has been doing for a long time. The report recommends prioritization of technical assistance and funding for local projects that can help close the projected supply gap. And they reference the 9 million acre feet of water supplies that are going to need to be created that was referenced in the California Water Plan. Next slide, please. And so last month, we reported on the State Water Resources Control Board report on the impacts of the Sackett decision on state permitting. The state board submitted a budget request for 12 new positions and $2.6 million in ongoing funding to deal with the increased workload associated. So the Legislative Analyst's Office recommended approving these positions to prevent permitting bottlenecks and backlogs, and suggested policy amendments to streamline that process. And so moving forward, there will be a significant debate about how to simplify the permitting process without undermining environmental protections. And so staff will continue to keep tracking this topic as well as SB 601, which is a bill by Senator Allen, and be updating the board as needed. Next slide, please. Attached, you will find a report with the 38 bills that we and the MPA have identified so far since the bill introduction deadline. Staff will be looking through those to see if there are any bills of interest and be bringing them back before this committee and board for official positions in the future. Just a quick heads up for you on the legislative calendar. The legislators will be breaking for recess on March 26th and be returning April 6th. And April 24th will be the last day for policy committees to hear budget bills. That concludes the state report, and I can pause here before moving on to the federal.
Thank you, Augustine. I think you indicated there was a document that showed the candidates for governor. Is that in the report?
Yes, ma'am. That is in the state report.
Is that, what page is that on?
That should have been shared with you as a handout.
Okay, I don't see it. I'll if someone could just send it to me, email it to me, I would appreciate that. Just that part.
Sure thing. Yep.
Thank you.
All righty.
Thank you. Go on.
Thank you, Chair. I'll move on to the federal report. We can move on to the next slide, please. As I'm sure you are aware, there have been
Augustine.
a lot.
Augustine,
Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry. Director Deere, did you have any questions? I'm sorry, Augustine.
No.
Of the state report? Oh, okay.
No, thanks.
Sorry, Augustine. Please go on. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Gray. Yeah, as I'm sure you are aware, there have been a lot of recent developments on the federal side in the past month. In this report, staff will be presenting a streamlined report on topics of direct interest to West Basin and the water community. And so with that, we'll move on to our first update, and that is regarding the topic of cybersecurity in the water sector. On February 2nd, a Senate committee held a hearing on cybersecurity challenges in the United States water sector. Discussions highlighted the small and medium systems are especially vulnerable due to under-resourcing and legacy technology, and also recommended targeting technical assistance for these entities. In addition, on March 3rd, due to the situation in the Middle East, the EPA issued an alert directing water utilities to improve their cybersecurity postures. We can move on to the next slide. So in an effort to secure external funding for West Basin's initiative to enhance cybersecurity protection capabilities, West Basin submitted a fiscal year 27 community project funding request to Congressman Liu and Senators Alex Padilla and Adam Schiff in the amount of $3 million. The West Basin Modernized Operational Security and Automation Integrated Control Project, or MOSAIC project for short, or also known as DCS, will address existing operational cybersecurity vulnerabilities and improve reliability, emergency preparedness, and operational efficiency of its recycled water system. West Basin, as well as our federal lobbyist, VSA, met with Representative Liu's office and have received positive feedback so far. Additionally, VSA is in the process of scheduling briefings for both the senators' offices so that we can present this information to them as well. Staff has also been collecting letters of support from stakeholders. And so we've received letters from Assemblymember McKinner, from Metropolitan Water District, the South Bay COG, the City of Inglewood, as well as the City of Manhattan Beach. And I can pause here to see if any others have any comments on submitting the project. All righty, we'll move on to the next slide. And so on February 24th, the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee discussed WRDA 2026, or WRDA, as you might know, is related to Army Corps funding. And so Assistant Secretary of the Army, Adam Telle, discussed the building infrastructure, not paperwork plan that his office released back in February. This seeks to maximize the ability to deliver national infrastructure, cut red tape, focus on efficiency, and increase transparency and accountability. We can move on to the next slide, please. And so as part of the hearings on the topic and the report that I mentioned previously, on February 25th, the Senate Environment and Public Works held their hearing on WRDA. And at the meeting, Senator Padilla used his 5 minutes to take to task Army Corps Assistant Secretary Telle on delays in improving paperwork on key projects in the West, including West Basin's Mills Park and North Gardena projects. For background, West Basin and BSA held briefings with Senator Padilla's office to bring this matter to the senator's attention. West Basin's funding is of particular importance to Senator Padilla, as he, along with Senator Feinstein and Representative Waters, successfully secured $3.8 million for these projects in the past. And so staff will continue to coordinate with BSA and will update the board on any developments, but it is very encouraging that our senator has taken this issue up with the Army Corps and is supporting West Basin's ask for these federal funds. Move on to the next slide, please. And so on March 9th, the EPA Office of Groundwater and Drinking Water announced that they are seeking nominations for the National Drinking Water Advisory Council to fill vacancies with 3-year appointments. They are seeking nominees who are from the general public, appropriate state and local agencies concerned with water hygiene and public water supply, and representatives of private organizations or groups demonstrating an active interest in the field. And so this concludes the presentation of the federal updates. There is a lot more information in the federal update that you can find in your packet, but I'm happy to answer any questions you might have at this time.
Thank you, Augustine. Director Deere, any questions?
No, thank you.
I don't have any questions, just comment, just very good report. You and Matt have presented very well. That's the state and federal update. Can we move to the next item then, please?
Yes, Madam Chair. Our final information counter update is item 6B. It's a monthly Metropolitan Water District update. And for the presentation, we have Matt Bay, our Manager of Water Policy and Resources Development. And this item begins on packet page 93.
Thank you, EJ. I'll start by going through some slides that begin on page 101 of the packet. And we can go ahead and move to the next slide, please. Okay, so I'll start by summarizing where things stand with the Colorado River. As you may recall, the federal deadline for the upper and lower basin states to present what's called a consensus plan was on February 14th. And that deadline unfortunately passed without any consensus being achieved. Stakeholders continue to meet, but they are now on a very tight schedule, with the federal administration keeping a very close eye on how things are progressing with their discussions. At next month's Metropolitan Caucus meeting, we're planning to receive an update from Metropolitan staff who are closely involved in the ongoing efforts to develop the post-2026 operating guidelines for the Colorado River and the consensus negotiations. And so we'll receive more information early next month on that. In addition, earlier this year, the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation released the draft environmental impact statement for the post-2026 operations of both Lake Powell and Lake Mead, which will otherwise expire by the end of this year. The public comment deadline recently passed earlier this month, with a record of decision that's expected in late summer. As of now, the new operating guidelines would be expected to go into effect on October 1st of this year. However, the ongoing discussions will certainly have an impact on that. Next slide, please. Metropolitan is currently going through its biennial budget and rates process. There's been a host of meetings and workshops that's been hosted so far, as well as additional meetings for member agency managers. A lot of discussion happening at this time. This process includes establishing the rates and charges for calendar years 2027 and 2028, as well as putting together the district's capital investment plan and also presenting a 10-year financial forecast. As you can see from the table on this slide, Metropolitan is currently considering an 18.5% rate increase over the next 2 years. This is actually down 0.5% from the initial numbers that Metropolitan presented due to an adjustment to an agreement between Metropolitan and San Diego County Water Authority. As they did during the last biennium budget adoption, the board is currently considering a number of different financial scenarios. And this does include potential changes to the ad valorem tax rate, which was increased during the last budget. Also new for this next budget cycle is changes to how revenues are generated by Metropolitan, balancing it between fixed and volumetric rates. There's been a concerted effort to try to shift some of their volumetric costs over to the fixed side of the process. And so while if you, there's some slides that they're presenting where there actually looks like there's a rate decrease, but that's essentially being made up by additional fixed costs that will be charged to the different member agencies. Other topics of discussion that the board are considering include the water sales assumptions, funding for conservation programs, capital projects, which includes Pure Water Southern California of great interest to West Basin, their baseline operating needs, and workforce and human capital. Staff will, of course, continue to closely track all the budget discussions and report back to this committee and the board as needed. The budget assumptions that Metropolitan is working with is also being incorporated into West Basin's budget process. The next Metropolitan Budget Workshop will take place next week on March 24th. Next slide, please. Okay, now I'll talk a little bit about the Metropolitan Local Resources Program. This is something that has been near and dear to West Basin over the years. The district has utilized funding from the program to help fund the expansion of West Basin's recycled water system, providing for cost savings and lower rates. Based on recent discussions, the program is no longer supporting as many projects as it used to. And so Metropolitan is kind of taking the opportunity to reevaluate the program in conjunction with its member agencies. Recently, Metropolitan staff conducted some working group meetings with member agencies to discuss how the program could be improved and or refined. Another working group meeting will be held in April to continue reviewing and discussing the program and its role as a local project incubator into the future. Next slide. So just a quick update on Pure Water Southern California. As you probably know, last month, the Metropolitan Board of Directors certified the final EIR for the project, which will allow for additional planning activities to move forward while the board considers final project approval. There has been a lot of discussion about the project during Metropolitan's budget process, as Metropolitan staff included funding in the initial draft biennial budget for some project planning activities over the next 2 years. This includes a good amount of grant funding that has been allocated to the project. As these discussions occur, Metropolitan staff continues to make progress on testing and design of the facility, including procurement related to a planned DPR testing facility. West Basin staff continues to track all discussions related to Pure Water SoCal, and will continue to work with our partners and Metropolitan staff to explore Pure Water Southern California as a regional water supply solution for ongoing challenges to California's imported water supplies. Next slide, please. Okay, just a quick look ahead here for the Metropolitan Board. The next set of meetings will take place next week on March 24th. The slate of meetings includes the subcommittee on imported water, the executive committee, and the previously mentioned budget workshop number 4 in the finance committee. Also included as attachments in today's agenda packet are a summary of items acted on by metropolitan committees in the month of February, as well as the draft board agenda for March. Next slide. Finally, we'll take a look at current water supply conditions, both in California and outside of it. On the state side, we're still at a 30% allocation on the state water project. I think as we know, unfortunately, much of February and March has been unseasonably warm. I think today's a great example of that, 90+ degrees today, which has unfortunately caused much of the snowpack to melt off earlier in the season than we would really like to see. Snowpack is currently at 38% of normal in the Northern Sierra, which is not ideal for how warm it has been. On the other hand, precipitation in the Northern Sierra is 112% of normal, which is good, but it has a much smaller impact on water conditions than that snowpack, which we rely on into the summer months. Right now, there are no major storms in the forecast. I think as we know, occasionally March and April can be wet months, even with some snowpack, but usually most of the snow accumulation has occurred by the end of this month. So with those dry and hot conditions in mind, I think it'll be maybe unlikely that the state water project allocation will see much of an increase for the remainder of the year. We could remain at 30% potentially. Water storage, however, at our key state reservoirs remains pretty strong, with Lake Oroville at 87% of capacity and San Luis Reservoir at 99% of capacity. On the Colorado River watershed, we're seeing similarly mediocre conditions, with snowpack currently at 67% of normal and precipitation at 91%. This is also causing less runoff into Lake Powell, and much of the water that goes into Lake Powell eventually makes its way downstream into Lake Mead. So there are downstream impacts to us. Water storage at Lake Powell remains at 24% of its capacity, while Lake Mead is at 34%. The long-term outlook for both reservoirs continues to show likely shortage conditions for the next few years. However, post-2026 operating guidelines, the negotiation work that Metropolitan and others are doing on behalf of California are sure to have additional impacts on future supply availability from both Lake Powell and Lake Mead. That concludes my presentation. Please let me know if you have any questions.
Well, thank you, Matt. Thank you for that thorough presentation, Director Deere. Do you have questions?
No, thank you.
All right, I don't have questions. Thank you very much for the presentation. The next item, please.
Madam Chairwoman, that brings us to closed session, and we have no closed session items today.
Somebody else talking. It was somebody else talking.
Hello?
Yes, we have no closed session items today. So that brings us to item 8, director's comments and future agenda items.
All right, Director Deere, any comments or future agenda items?
Oh, not at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me thank Matt and Augustine for the reports today. Very thorough, and we appreciate it. I do have a question. I should have asked it during, I think it was the state presentation. You mentioned there was a senator that spoke with the Army Corps of Engineers regarding our 2 projects. Who was that person again?
Madam Chair, that was on the federal report, and it was Senator
Okay.
Padilla. Yes.
Okay, all right. Did we communicate to his office that we appreciate that at all, Mr. General Manager or someone?
Yes, we're happy to do that. And Augustine, maybe you could just remind the chairwoman, the staff member that assisted us with that.
Yes, I believe that was John Watts.
John Watts.
Oh, John,
And,
okay, so we did,
yeah.
go on. Go on,
And Chair
Matt.
Greg,
Or-
Chair Greg, we did actually reach out to their office already and did ask them to pass along our thanks for advocating on our behalf at the committee hearing.
Good, good. All right, well, thank you. I just wanted to mention that. Appreciate it. All right, is there anything else, Mr. General Manager? Anything from you?
No, I just would say that last week, staff as well as directors Pavai Directors Houston and Director Alvarez traveled to Sacramento. The meetings all went very well, and I think they'll help get us ready for our federal trip, where we'll be asking for money for our Mosaic project. So it was a great trip, and so I want to say thank you to staff as well as our state legislative advocates in Sacramento, Neomel Pappas and Associates.
Well, thank you for mentioning that. I want to say thank you to the staff and board members and those who went on behalf of West Basin, advocating for us. So with that, Director Dare, anything else? If not,
No, we'll talk to you tomorrow, I guess.
all right. Thank you. All right. Thank you very much, everyone, for your reports and attention today. So with that, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.